speak to Peter Edwards, who is the former editor of Labour List, a Labour Party supporting website. Plus, we have Ben Harris-Quinney, who's the chairman of the Bow Group, a think tank promoting conservative thinking, which has a number of Tory MPs as members. Peter, I'm going to start with you. Busy day, first day back at school for politicians, and it doesn't look like it's necessarily going to be an easy ride for Boris Johnson. How do you want this to play out over the next few hours?
Well, anyone from a Labour perspective like me wants Boris Johnson to go, but we've got to think about if and how that could happen. I think Tom Harwood, your correspondent, was right to highlight all these kind of procedural motions going on in Parliament. They can be very important from a sanctions point of view, but actually, I don't think they'll be the decisive factor. It will either be Tory MPs losing confidence themselves in Boris Johnson, or Tory MPs being panicked that their seats, particularly those in marginal seats, are up for grabs because the public have lost trust in the Prime Minister. And if you look back at what's happened with other Conservative Prime Ministers, ultimately John Major forced out a general election, but Theresa May and Margaret Thatcher really forced out by their own MPs. So I think this week is the beginning of another war of attrition, if you like, between the Conservative Party and perhaps itself. And I think once we get through this week, see the level of public disdain, then will be clear if Tory backbenchers particularly are ready to throw their boss overboard.
Yeah, Ben, I'm going to come to you because Peter's got a point, hasn't he? The people who are really going to decide the Prime Minister's fate are his own people. And certainly before war broke out in Ukraine, a lot of people seem to be sharpening their knives or at least penning their letters for Sir Graham Brady. From your position and the MPs that you talk to, where do you think the mood of the backbenchers is at now?
Well, unfortunately, I can't offer much disagreement to what Peter has said. I think he's absolutely spot on. And I think a lot of people have got a bit overexcited about what the processes are and what the potential is. Alistair Campbell said the other day that he wanted to see Theresa May come back as Prime Minister. Lord Adonis has talked about having a coalition all in response to the Partygate scandal. And I think the reality is none of those things are going to happen. There are real questions that remain over Boris Johnson's head. And of course, he is the one that knows best whether his actions have been right or not. But I sense no mood among Conservative backbenchers to oust Boris Johnson, and that's the only way that he would be removed as Prime Minister. That may change over the next few weeks if more fines come in, if the Sue Gray report comes out. But ultimately, I think it's going to fall to the May elections to give an indication of what the country thinks, which is the most important thing. I would caution, particularly with that election coming up so soon, I would caution against taking any action before that doesn't consult the public and doesn't take the public mood properly.
Yeah, Peter, you said at the beginning of your answer that if you're Labour, you'd want Boris Johnson to go. But Boris Johnson going doesn't mean the Conservative Party going, does it? It just means a change at the top. And with so much going on, and with people like President Zelensky of Ukraine actually really appreciating the support he's getting from the current Prime Minister, and if there's not really any appetite among Conservative backbenchers right now to oust their leader, all of this is just a huge distraction and a waste of time, given the context that we're currently in.
No, I don't think values like democracy and honesty and the rule of law are ever a waste of time. I think there's a legitimate challenge about, with the horrific events in Ukraine, is now the right moment. So, cast your minds back. Margaret Thatcher was forced out in 1990 in the midst of a long struggle involving the Gulf and Iraq. And ultimately, from Labour's point of view, the only way Labour has a prospect of getting in power is through a general election. It does not look at all like there's going to be a general election anytime soon, which really means either Boris staggers on, possibly until the autumn, or there's a coup immediately after the May local elections. So you're right in a sense when you pick out the challenges facing Labour, because whatever happens in the long run, there's going to be a Tory Prime Minister for a little while longer yet. But I don't think at all, purely because of events in Ukraine, that Labour should give up trying to press home the importance of values like being truthful with Parliament and obeying the law.
Ben, I mean, look, is it right, therefore, that Boris might wriggle out of this just because there's pretty awful stuff happening elsewhere in the world? I mean, surely, when it comes to the situation that the UK is in now, where we're leading the way, some might argue, in shipping arms to a war not far away on our own continent against a sabre-rattling lunatic, that we really do need absolute trust in our Prime Minister.
We do, and look, if the Prime Minister's done very severe things wrong, and if the Conservative Party move to remove him, then he has to go. I don't think there can be this notion that our laws are somehow suspended or our processes are somehow suspended because of a war that's going on in Ukraine. Keir Starmer has said today that he feels that Boris Johnson has lent into that war in order to paper over the cracks of Partygate. And in many ways, that's a more serious accusation than Partygate itself. My view is if you go back and look at Boris Johnson's net favourability, unfavourability rating, it dropped by the most significant margin long before Partygate broke, and I think that's because the people that voted Boris Johnson in feel that he is not delivering on those patriotic Brexit Conservative priorities that they wanted, and so I think that's what Boris Johnson needs to do. It's not that he shouldn't be paying a mind to Ukraine, but there are many problems going on at home. The cost of living crisis is exploding. Inflation is exploding. They're all over the place on their energy policy. And so I actually think that if you look at what the public think, and these are different countries, but you can look at elections like Hungary and France that's going on at the moment. And I think these things demonstrate that the public are actually a lot more concerned about what's going on in this country and what's going on with their own situation. And that's what Boris Johnson needs to return to focus to if he wants to re-establish that very popular role he had in the Brexit campaign and in the 2019 election.
Peter, Ben, thank you so much for giving me your opinions from both sides of the political fence.